Hey everyone, welcome back to Topher Drives, where as you can tell from the state of my voice, this week I have been sick, but despite that, I've still found time to live with and drive the new 2026 Jeep Cherokee. Now, repeat viewers will know that I went to the launch event of this new generation Jeep Cherokee in Westlake Village, California, and it was raining, downpouring even, and I had to start the video inside the car. We drove a Laredo model, which was two below this Overland trim that I've been living with this week, and I emerged from that experience thinking, that's quite a nice effort from Jeep, and it seems to fit better in the segment than the previous gen Cherokee. But the one thing that I wasn't super wowed by was the fuel economy. And I always say I want to get these back home, I want to live with them some and see what they're like in the real world, because of course in California we were out on canyon roads and things, and I don't know that a canyon road is really the best place to test a four-cylinder hybrid crossover thing like this. So today I've brought it to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we're going to run a real-world city commute. Now, the EPA and Jeep claim that this gets 37 miles per gallon combined, 35 on the highway, 39 in the city. So we're going to reset our trip before we go on our drive today and see how this actually does. But before that, let's walk you around it and show you this completely new, from the ground up Jeep Cherokee. Now, my mom had a Jeep Cherokee in 2014, and hers was nothing like this. It had a V6, it had a 9-speed auto, and it wasn't as long and narrow. This one now has a turbocharged 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine and a CVT, combined power output, 210 horsepower, 230 pound-feet of torque. These are all 4x4, as Jeep calls it, but in normal terms, they're all-wheel drive. They start at $35,000 for the base Cherokee trim. It then goes up to the Laredo, then to the Limited, then to the 85th Anniversary Edition, and then to this, the Overland, which starts at $43,000. Ours, as spec today in Silver Zynith over Arctic, comes in at $46,000. And obviously, you know, I went to the launch event of this. We already talked about that. They said that they took some inspiration from the XJ Cherokee, and I don't know, I just don't see it. And in fact, I found an XJ to park next to yesterday, and I think the only similarity is this line here that goes sort of along the trunk and then cuts down to a sharp sort of flat back. But the problem is they've made the taillight go all the way into the side of the car, whereas in the XJ Cherokee the taillight sort of runs vertically, and this one is horizontal. But I don't know that there's really anything about this that screams XJ to me, and sort of the whole car is like that. You know, Jeep has kept the Cherokee name alive for this. It went away briefly in like the 2000s when they called it the Liberty for a couple of generations, but this has all just been the same sort of size of SUV. But I think that in the way of doing it like this, it's more of a safe call because it fits into the segment better. It's a hybrid, it's all the stuff. So let's poke around it and show you what this thing looks like inside and out. We'll start in the back, where of course this Overland trim has a power liftgate. It beeped at me and didn't open. There it goes. Lots of beeping. The Topher and I have joked this week that this is kind of like a Jeep RAV4, and all of the beeping is kind of accentuating that for us. In the back here, decently high load surface, but you do have this sort of like serrated edge to help you load stuff in and not scratch anything. Underneath the trunk floor, we have the spot where a firefighter would cut the hybrid cables if they needed to behind this panel, but more importantly, lots of room underneath. But then disappointingly, no spare wheel, but they do give you a place to mount one, which means I bet your Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealer would sell you a spare tire. But it's a shame they just don't put one in. Come on, they call this a 4x4. It should have a spare. But jokes aside, pretty decent room in the back. Of course, this is a little bit bigger than the outgoing Cherokee. And, you know, okay, I've heard some mixed opinions on where Jeep put their little, like, rear hatch closing guy button there. Sorry, I can't think straight today. You guys know that, did anyone else watch the Naked Brothers Band show? And there was an episode where Nat Wolff was like sick and his voice was all deep and groggy, and Rosalina liked him better. Maybe you guys will like me better today with a bit of brain fog and some baritone voice. Anyway, so this is here, and I think this makes sense because if you put stuff in the back, you're then walking away, right? And you can kind of just hit this on your way back to the driver's door, and then that will shut and do its thing. Before we step inside, let's step under the hood where the hood release is and button. And I think a lot of these cars on this Stella Large platform are kind of using this because a lot of them are EVs. Take the Wagoneer S, the Dodge Charger Daytona. They've got buttons because they have frunks, but this has an engine, and you can see it says turbo right on top, like an old SRT4 Neon or something like that. But again, 210 horsepower, 230 pound-feet of torque, which is decent, honestly. It's not the slowest thing in the world, though it does weigh over 4,000 pounds. I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4,300 pounds. And then this has a CVT. It's a hybrid kind of in the way that a RAV4 is, you know? It's just engine and CVT and electric motors. I think the silver Zynith looks decent on this, and the overall sort of design language of this new Cherokee, I think it's fine. You know, I don't think it's making a huge statement, but I also don't think it has to. It's a Jeep Cherokee. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. The only thing I will say is that this segment is incredibly competitive. I mean, everyone and their brother, every company and their sister has a car that competes in it. I mean, there has to be 20 different ones. So how do you choose? You have to stand out. And I know that Jeep people, you know, it's all about sort of brand recognition, brand familiarity, so that probably does it for them. But if you're someone coming from outside of the Jeep family, would you get this? Well, today I suppose we'll find out. But first, let's show you the back seat where we have these Wagoneer S-style door handles to get in. I mentioned this has the Arctic interior, which I'm a pretty big fan of, because as we saw from the last Jeep Grand Cherokee we drove, Jeep's been paying a little bit more attention to detail lately. So the perforations on these seats are quite nice. You've got the contrast brown stitching in here, and even the door panels have a bit of that Arctic, actually a lot of the Arctic. Most of it is Arctic, and then you have the black on top. I think they've colored this quite well. The carpets are black, the headliner's black, top of the door panels, seat belts, top of the dash. I think the overall sort of color coordination and design in this is quite good. Inside the cabin, decently quiet, pretty well insulated. We'll fold down the armrest that has some cup holders. But the most important thing back here is space, and there is a decent amount of it. At 5'11", sat behind myself, I've got plenty of room. I've got decent amenities. I have vents back here, though no B-pillar vents like you get in a Grand Cherokee. Very slight drivetrain hump in the middle, though I do think you could put an adult in this middle seat and you would be completely fine. We have a 9-speaker Alpine sound system in here, which is fantastic. Excited to show you that when we are into the driving portion. And of course, a massive panoramic moonroof. But even headroom back here is fine despite that. Now, there are buttons to get out of this, and I don't think actually the back has a manual release, which is a bit weird, but the ones on the front do, which we'll show you right now because we're going to jump in and start this up after we show you the tires. Of course, we always like to see what sort of tires we're working with, but I want to go to a wheel where the center cap is facing up. This is a Pirelli Scorpion MS, just kind of a pretty standard all-season tire on a 235/50 R20 squared setup, and I love the center caps in these because they're an old Willys Jeep, which is what my grandpa drove in the military, so it's a fun little Easter egg, and you know that Jeep is all about their Easter eggs. All right, I've had to take a little break to cough and sniff and all the stuff, but let's go ahead and show you the interior up front. More of that Arctic and those little manual releases that I told you about for the doors, just in case you're inside the car and the battery dies and the buttons aren't working. Nice that they give you those as an option. Up front, seats look the same as they do in the back, which is a good thing. These are, of course, power. They have 2 memory settings, and they have lumbar adjust. We'll talk about how comfortable they are once we're actually moving, but I want to step in this and get the air conditioning going because it's a bit sticky outside today. Headphone users, here's a little test for quietness. Decently isolated there from the outside world. Let's fire it up. Not sure how I feel about that new chime, though it does seem different than the one you get in a Fiat, though does Fiat still? Yeah, I guess they have the 500e here, but anyway. Interior is obviously completely different, though it's more so just up to date with everything that Stellantis is doing these days. So we have this infotainment screen with wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, digital cluster, which is pretty consistent among everything these days in the market. And then down in the middle, we have a dial shifter. You saw our engine stop-start button, but the biggest thing I like up here in this interior is all of the packaging and places to put things. You guys know I don't really like wireless chargers. Well, this has one. but it's sort of out of the way. So if you want to put your phone on the wireless charger, you can. But the best thing about this interior is all of this space up front, in front of the shifter, below the infotainment, where you could stick probably 3 phones in there, all side by side. But I love having somewhere to set my phone in the car that's not on a wireless charger, and I think that's fantastic. Otherwise, driver's compartment is decent. This center console does intrude a little bit into your room. And then you've got this standalone climate control panel here, which is kind of haptic touch, cheap feeling sort of crap. It's probably the cheapest feeling bit in this entire interior because Jeep has trimmed this out pretty nicely. This Overland trim gets a stitched top of the dash. This little trim here is stitched as well. Of course, you get a leather wrapped steering wheel. There are a couple of things in here that feel a little bit cheap, like the top of the door panels here are scratchy plastic, bottom of the door panels, though at least they are white to match the middle. Center console is pretty big, and it does kind of include this wireless charger. I've got my hat in here right now and a bunch of tissues for when I need to stop and blow my nose. But I think the overall sort of vibe of this interior is nice, though I am very distracted by the massive steering wheel all the time. This is, I think, the same steering wheel you get on the new Charger, and it's a little bit obnoxious, I think, for the interior of this Jeep, which is otherwise very sort of nice and reserved, and then boom, you've got this massive hexagon in front of you. It is 6-sided, this thing, and very thick, so at least it has physical buttons on it. I do like that they've done that. So I've got my wireless CarPlay going there. Why don't we get this thing out on the road and show you what it's like to drive, to commute. So this week I've done 32 MPG. I have actually driven this quite a bit. We've got half a tank of fuel still, showing 210 miles of range. This has just under a 14-gallon fuel tank, so, you know, it's doing the best it can, being an all-wheel drive 4,000-pound hybrid, and this little 1.6 having to pull it around. Resetting the trip is easy. You just hold the OK button. Actually, I didn't mean resetting the trip. I mean resetting the fuel economy. Let's go drive it. Into reverse. Some of the best quality cameras in the game right now, seriously. I mean, look at the definition of these. And then when you go into drive, they don't pop back up. This is actually something very annoying about this car. You have to go into the screen to pull up your 360 camera. Less of a deal on something like this that has some ground clearance, like if you pull up and go over a curb. It's not the end of the world, but you do have the parking sensors that let you know that you are about to have a crash, so that's good. But all of this is nice. 360 cameras, also very nice quality. And I love that this dial shifter sort of clicks into place. It's not continuously spinning like it would on, say, a Ford Bronco Sport. Initial driving impressions with the Jeep Cherokee. Well, obviously I got a bit of a sneak peek when I was in Westlake Village in California earlier this year, but it has been nice to live with this. This is what I always like to do with these cars. And really what you notice first is the massive steering wheel. You kind of have to get your head around that it does feel just a bit too big for the rest of the interior, but steering weight itself is nice. It's kind of on the heavier side of medium. So I would maybe like to see the steering be a little bit lighter, though. With that being said, this is still plenty maneuverable. I haven't had any problem, you know, feeling like I'm not able to make a turn. You don't feel like you're lugging this thing around. Though with this having gotten a little bit bigger, you do kind of have to watch yourself a bit, but it's not so big that it's unmanageable. This sort of thing is what hybrids love, too, when you're just kind of coasting down a hill. We haven't even started the engine yet. Very dramatic sort of parking structure surface here. Makes me sound like I'm going Mach Jesus when I'm going 7 miles an hour. All right, let's get out of the parking structure and go into the city, and we will commute this out to the outskirts of the city, sort of a real world sort of deal as we do. Now, here's what I really don't like is, you know, I know that I've got plenty of room right here, but some people would feel more comfortable having their camera pulled up right now, and it's just having to do a couple of clicks is annoying. It's one extra step that you don't want to do. But the cameras do stay up at decent speeds, which means in a situation like this, they are helpful. Now this doesn't have air suspension, but the front end this week has been making very sort of air suspension-y noises, and I don't know what that's about. I forgot it's Sunday, so the parking's free. How lovely is that? I think the city of Ann Arbor is actually less shut right now. There's been a Morgan Wallen concert going on the past 2 days, so the city's been pretty much unusable. I came here the other day before I was sick to try and film this video, and unfortunately the Morgan Wallen fans had taken over the city, so weren't able to do much. Right, the 1.6 liter has come to life, and here's where I'm the most impressed with this Jeep Cherokee, okay? You think that with this being Jeep's first attempt at a traditional hybrid. Now, I'm not saying their 4xe, their Wrangler and their Grand Cherokee that they've been making for a few years at this point. I'm saying their first attempt at an actual hybrid car, Toyota RAV4 style. The inputs are fantastic. You never have to guess what's going on with this accelerator pedal. The brake pedal feels good in this as well. And as a city car, it's lovely. This Overland trim also gets a camera rear view mirror. Lots of good stuff in here, seriously. I mean, you've got heated ventilated seats, which are hidden by the steering wheel. The first time I got in this at the launch event, I thought, how could they not have buttons for the heated and ventilated seats? And then I moved my head, and then I saw all of them right there, as well as a volume knob. Check it out. Right, so after the inputs, the second most impressive thing here in this is the quietness of the engine. This is another thing I thought that Jeep would struggle with, you know, trying to make something that wasn't buzzy and obnoxious, but it just isn't. I mean, it exists so well in the background. Right now we're just in EV mode because that's seems to be what it likes to do the most. Transitions from EV to ICE at low speeds are completely seamless. However, I have found sometimes when you're going 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, they do sort of, I don't know, you can feel them a little bit. It's kind of like a little pulsation on your butt. Steering quickness seems to be pretty nice as well. You're able to maneuver this around with mostly no problem. And then there's the ride quality, which is also pretty good. You know, it's not the softest thing in the world, but I'm purposely hitting some potholes here. Now, I haven't found any standalone EV mode like you'd find in a Toyota, where you can just push EV, it stays in it. We do have a few drive modes: sand, mud, snow, auto, and sport. I have spent 99% of my week in auto mode. Here's a previous gen Cherokee, Trailhawk, just like my mom had, except hers was white. That's a good, nice shade of orange there. But you can see, just looking at that, how big of a departure this is from the previous generation. It is just whisper quiet in here. I mean, quieter than a Toyota. You know, Toyota hybrid engines are bulletproof, but you pay the price in volume with those, which doesn't bother most people, I would suspect, but this just feels somehow a little bit more refined, which is wild coming from a Jeep. The only thing that scares me a bit is that they have gone with a very small capacity engine and turbocharging. I meant to Google and see what cars in Europe had this engine, because I assume there are probably some like Peugeots or Fiats or things that we can't get here that have this. Just because I was curious about like longevity and reliability. This is the first car stateside that we've gotten with this 1.6 turbo. I've got this set to obviously the MPG readout, and you have this little bar at the bottom that kind of gives you a score of how eco you're being, and it does this based off of color. So when it's green, it means you're doing very well. When it's gray, when it's grayed out, it means that the engine isn't running at all. So right now we're in EV mode. But if it's orange or yellow, it means that you're, you know, you could probably be doing a little bit better. But this goes all the way up to 40 plus. So right now we're doing like 25. We're just gonna coast around this corner, try and take this kind of tight. There it is. And I'm still comfortable going through potholes. We don't have the biggest sidewall on this, but at least it doesn't have like a 22 or something crazy. I think the biggest perk of a car like this is, with it being a hybrid, it's able to be decently efficient, and then with it being a Jeep, it means that it can just sort of plow over all of the imperfections in the road. See this? You just drive over literally whatever you want and it doesn't care. Oh yeah. Now, there are a decent amount of interior rattles in this, and they're little petty interior rattles. You know, there's no like big panels that are shaking back and forth, but little things under the dashboard are rattling here and there. Can we get past the Dodge Journey? Are we narrow enough? Yes, we are. This car's been lovely to live with this week, though, because, you know, I've been in a relaxed mood this week. I haven't really wanted to drive quickly or really go anywhere, but the places I have had to go, it's been relaxing to live with this car because it doesn't encourage you to drive fast ever. There's never a point in time where I think, I really want to floor the Jeep Cherokee right now. That thought has never occurred to me at all. Not a single time. And that's good, because I don't think this should be encouraging you, but you may think that it would, because it has the 1.6 turbo, it's got 210 horsepower. You may think it might be mildly sporty. It's not. It's still a Jeep at the end of the day, and I think that is correct for this. Currently averaging 31.9 MPG, and that is most of the city section there, so I don't know. That 39 MPG figure that they claim, I think it might be a little bit inflated. I don't know how they've managed to do... I don't know how they've gotten that, because even, you know, when I was in California, I wasn't really driving this super hard either, and I think I got like 30 or something like that. One of the reps from Jeep told me he was averaging over 40. I don't know how he was doing that. Going up now, 31, 6, 7, 8, 9, 32. Very good. We're being very eco right now. So eco. So many levels of eco. Okay, let's talk about what it's actually like to sit in this. Well, I don't like how much this center console pokes out, and I know that I said that I really like this storage compartment here. I would give up room for one phone to have this not protrude into the cabin so much, because it's not wrapped or padded in anything, so when my knee rests up against this, which it does, it's not very comfortable. So I don't like that. Otherwise, you know, this has been a new experience because, like I said, I drove a Laredo at the launch event, which is only one up from base. That had cloth seats, and in my opinion, the cloth seats were more comfortable. These leather seats are a little bit hard. I don't know. It's like the leather material itself is hard, and like these sort of protrusions of the seat that stick out a bit. It's taken me a bit to like find a comfortable spot in this, but it's been mostly okay. Luckily, you do have the lumbar. The lumbar only goes in and out. It doesn't go up and down. One thing actually I have noticed this week that I don't complain about hardly ever is the reflection of the dashboard on the windshield. I think it's because of this kind of speaker grill design they have going on here. It makes it a lot more obvious. But when the sun is out, which it has been most of this week, this day is a little bit of an outlier, it's all you see. The whole windshield is just this sort of like lines from the dashboard. And I hate when people complain about this. It drives me nuts because it's such a non-issue. But I think this car in particular, it's just that much more noticeable because of the texture on the dash. Oh my goodness, average MPG 40.1. We are about to merge onto the highway though, so this is just going to get completely killed. But if we're able to do that 37, that combined figure once we get off the highway, I will eat my words about this not doing its claimed ratings. Brakes feel good on this too. You know, they don't have that weird like hybrid squish at the top of the pedal. They just feel normal. This is, and I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, this is by a mile the most modern feeling Jeep car I've driven in so long. Like it feels like it's of the times. Jeep doesn't usually do that, so this is, to be honest, it doesn't really feel like I'm in a Jeep at all. All right, let's get this merged onto the highway, and we'll show you the cruise control and all that good stuff. Let's get it merged. Here we go. Completely spoiling the fuel economy. It's dropping like a fly. My goodness. Is that the term? Dropping like flies? I think that's right. All right, let's get back over here because I want to show you the cruise control, which is very easy to use. It's all just these buttons over here on the right-hand side of the wheel. And if you push the one that has a steering wheel icon on it, it activates the active driving assist. Actually, I lied. You have to click set as well after you do that. But this is all good. This has the steering assist, so this will drive somewhat for you, and it's got a grip sensor, which is very good as well. Weren't really able to try this a whole lot in California because we were mostly in the canyons and then on PCH a little bit. But with using this week, it does actually seem to do a pretty good job. It just gets really annoyed if you don't have your hands on the wheel for, I don't know, anything longer than 2 seconds or so. Got adaptive cruise on this as well, all of which is adjustable through these two buttons here. You push this one on the top to increase your distance, and you push the one on the bottom to decrease your following distance. And we can hit cancel. That will pause the cruise control. We'll resume it once we do our little clover leaf here. As you guys saw back there, merging speed is adequate, and I was not flat out there. I was, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70% throttle. And then doing a clover leaf like this, you know, the car settles into the corner just fine. You don't feel, you know, like the car is completely out of place. The only thing is these seats, they're not very bolstered. So I was sitting in the passenger seat with the Topher in this the other day, and he was taking some spicy corners, and I did feel like I was going to fall out of it. So just keep that in mind. I'm actually being helped right now by my sweaty back on the seat, which I should have the ventilated seat on, so I'm not so sweaty. So we'll toggle that. And I will say, the ventilated seat in this does work in an absolute treat. It's already on full blast. Oh, and I'm cured. That is lovely. All right, let's reset the 72 mile an hour little cruise control guy. Anyway, though, what about other ergonomics here in the cabin of the Cherokee? Well, I want to talk about elbow comfiness because it does seem to be quite good. I've got a decent squish here on my center console. I've got equal squish on the driver's door panel, and you are at mostly even heights to rest your hands on the steering wheel. Your right arm is going to sit a little bit higher just due to the height of this center console. Visibility out of this is decent. The mirrors are a little bit small. I think they could be a little bit taller, maybe a little bit more narrow, just to sort of complement the shape of this car a little bit better. And then obviously visibility out the back is good with the camera and without it. The headrests are really far set off to the side, so you can see just about everything you need out that back window. Though I'm not someone that has a problem with camera mirrors. I sometimes have people sitting in the back seat that request I turn it off because it makes them a bit nauseous. But personally, no problem. Overall seating position in this is nice. I have the seat in its lowest setting, and I can still see mostly over the front of that hood. And you know, here's what's nice about this too, okay? Yes, it's sort of like, we've joked that it's like the Jeep RAV4, but you do still feel like you're sitting in a Jeep with this kind of high seating position. It's a bit more commanding of a seating position than you'd get in a Toyota or a Honda. Overall NVH, I can't be a great judge of that right now because my ears are full of sick fluid. But I was driving this like a day before I got sick, and it did seem like it was decently quiet. Like pretty dang well insulated. And one thing you don't hear is the engine. Average MPG 33.5. I don't know that we're quite gonna make the 37 average, but we might do the 35 highway figure that this is supposed to get. We'll do a quick little rip of the performance loop, but we'll gather our final read on the MPG before we completely spoil it. Before we jump off the highway, why don't we play you this 9-speaker Alpine sound system, because that is another highlight of this Overland Cherokee. Volume knob there, or you have these buttons on the back of the wheel. Biblically accurate Stellantis stuff. Now, this is one of those things that, you know, seems like it excuses the price a little bit. And I feel like everything in this segment, top trim, is kind of in the mid-40s anyway, so it's kind of apples to apples. But the 9-speaker Alpine in this, Jeep has found a way to sort of make this seem more powerful than I think it actually is. And I always say, you know, quantity of speakers doesn't always equal quality. They have knocked it out of the park. This might honestly be best in segment, apart from something like a higher end car like a Volvo XC60 or a Mercedes GLC with a Burmester. But this Alpine's fantastic, and Jeep doesn't really mess around with their sound systems. I remember Emily's old Jeep Compass. She had this option on that car that was like the Sun and Sound Pack that got you the pano roof and like a better sound system. And I think that was unbranded. It may have been an Alpine system like this, but I remember that being pretty good. And even the bass sound system on the Laredo that we listened to out in California, that was pretty good as well. So kudos to Jeep for kind of investing in places that other manufacturers aren't. All right, final readout from our real-world city commute today, 32.5 MPG. As I suspected, we didn't quite do the EPA rating. But now that means we can put this into sport, which turns traction control off. Like I said earlier, you know, power here is decent. It's not like earth-shattering, but I think it does what it needs to do for the segment, for the size of this car. Let's rip a corner in this thing. See how composed it is. Again, traction control is off. Into the brakes. Decently flat around there. Traction control still kind of butting its little head in, even though it says it's off. I guess that would more so be stability control in this situation, but handling is good. I don't really think that matters in the discussion of this car, but if you're on a canyon road and you need to get home, it'll do it. All right, we're gonna go over here, get this off the line, do a little 0 to 60, and then that will be a wrap on this Jeep Cherokee Hybrid. A car that has really been quite a treat to live with this week. I suppose now that we're not worried about fuel economy anymore, we can show you some of these other gauge cluster layouts. So these are different options for the middle of this setup, or you can hit this button and it switches the design of the entire thing. So you can have that one, you could have a simple one with just the speedo, or you could have a map, which does take a bit to load up. There it is. See that? Not bad. Okay, last test of the Jeep Cherokee. Let's do a little 0 to 60. And there it is. Yeah. Okay, well, you all saw the, you know, performance of that. You know, the one thing I will say is that the power is pretty progressive. You know, there's no sort of like fall off. So, whatever. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this one up. You know what I think this is? You know what this feels like? And I've been developing this opinion all week. How do I want to wrap this up? What can I relate this to? Well, in an effort to not copy the Topher and say that this just feels like a Jeep RAV4, I think this feels like if Land Rover tried to make a RAV4. And hear me out for a second, okay? These newer Jeep interiors, they're closer to Land Rover than they've ever been. We saw this in the Grand Cherokee Summit. Is that what it was? The red on tan one. Beautiful interior. The attention to detail was fantastic. This does kind of feel like a baby version of that. And if you get in like a lower trim Range Rover, like a Velar or an Evoque or something, they don't feel as nice. And if the top Jeep Grand Cherokee is the big Range Rover, this is the Velar, I suppose you could say, or the Evoque. But it just, I think it fills the gap in the segment a little bit better than the old one did, and I think this might appeal to a different sort of buyer, because Jeep is kind of aiming for this higher echelon than they've been in, and they're sort of revamping the lineup. They've got the Wagoneer, which is very luxurious, the Grand Cherokee, which top trims of that are very luxurious, and even this regular Cherokee is pretty dang luxurious these days, and I'm proud of Jeep for making something genuinely recommendable. Like, I would feel confident recommending this car to somebody. And the good thing about this is, you know, everyone and their brother, their aunt or uncle works for one of the big three. So if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I have to get a car, but it has to be a Stellantis product, here's another one that I could recommend now, because this has been nice to live with. It's comfortable, it's easy to use, it's quiet, it feels high quality mostly, apart from some of the interior rattles that I would be going to the dealer to complain about. The sound system's great. I think it looks decent enough. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking, but, you know, sometimes having a car that looks kind of NPC-ish and blends in is a good thing. You don't always want to stand out. Sometimes you want to fly under the radar, and this does that just fine. But I think the big picture on this is that it does feel like one of its Japanese competitors, but the materials in here might even feel a little bit nicer. So, good job, Jeep. For a first effort for a hybrid like this, I mean, this is just fantastic. I don't think they really could have done this any better. I'd put a different steering wheel on it because I think this one's preposterous, but whatever. That's going to wrap it up. Let's show you this thing one last time. The silver Zynith here shining in the sun. Not to be confused with Pokemon Crown Zenith, but I think pronounced the same, actually. So, curious to hear your guys' thoughts about this new Jeep Cherokee. The comments that I'm envisioning, I'm sure people are concerned about the reliability of this 1.6 turbo. And like I said, if you guys have this engine in Europe, please let me know. I meant to look that up before the video, but curious about that. But I'm happy with this. It's been good to live with, and that's going to wrap this up. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. But thank you all so much for watching. I should be better by the next video, and we'll see you then. Take care.